In the dark, damp woods of Illinois, hidden behind thick trees and overgrown shrubs, lies one of the most infamous and haunting places in the state, Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. For years, this cemetery has been the subject of countless eerie tales and supernatural encounters. What was once a peaceful, forgotten burial ground is now a site of mystery and terror. The cemetery's history goes back to the 1800s, and over the years, it has gained a reputation for being a place of dark spirits and unexplained occurrences. Located just outside of Chicago, Bachelor's Grove was once a simple, quiet cemetery where families would bury their loved ones. But today, it's a destination for ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and anyone looking for a glimpse of the paranormal world. The cemetery itself is remote, tucked away from the city, surrounded by thick trees and a dense forest. It feels like a place that time has forgotten. But it hasn't been forgotten by the spirits that haunt it. According to local legend, Bachelor's Grove is plagued by phantom lights, disembodied voices, and ghostly figures that have been seen walking among the graves. Those who venture too close often feel a strange, unexplainable presence following them, and some claim to have even seen ghostly apparitions standing among the gravestones. But it wasn't always this way. The cemetery, once a peaceful resting place, has long been abandoned, left to rot in the hands of nature. But in the dead of night, it's when the cemetery's true power is said to come alive, when shadows move across the ground and the whispers of the past echo in the wind. Some locals say they've seen a woman in white walking along the cemetery's paths, her figure glowing faintly under the moonlight. Others speak of a shadowy figure lurking at the edge of the trees, watching anyone who dares enter the grounds. The chilling stories of what happens when you visit this forsaken place continue to fuel the mystery surrounding Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. Despite its reputation, the cemetery continues to draw visitors who seek answers to the mystery of why it's haunted. But there's one thing that everyone who's visited agrees on. Once you step foot on the land, you can never truly leave it behind. The energy of the cemetery lingers following you, haunting you long after you've walked away. As the sun begins to set behind the tall trees, the atmosphere around Bachelor's Grove Cemetery shifts. The soft chirping of birds fades, replaced by an eerie silence that settles over the land. It's as if the whole forest itself holds its breath, waiting for the night to fully take hold. People who ventured into the cemetery after dusk speak of an otherworldly quiet, broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves underfoot or the sound of branches creaking in the wind. The mysterious energy surrounding Bachelor's Grove Cemetery intensifies when darkness falls. Those brave enough to explore the site at night report hearing strange sounds, footsteps that echo in the distance when no one is around, whispers that drift through the trees but vanish when you try to listen more closely. Ghostly apparitions are said to appear, walking along the gravestones, their faces barely visible, but their presence unmistakable. Locals claim that if you stand near the old, crumbling gravestones long enough, you can feel the temperature drop suddenly, a chill that cuts through you like the coldest of winds, even on the hottest summer nights. It's not just the physical cold that's disturbing. It's the feeling of being watched, a sense that something invisible is standing just out of sight, waiting for you to turn your back. Some who have ventured into the cemetery at night have disappeared, vanishing without a trace. Search parties have scoured the surrounding woods, but nothing is ever found. Others who have come back speak of an overwhelming feeling of being followed or haunted by the ghostly figures that inhabit the cemetery. The spirits are said to be restless, bound to the land by an unknown force, and they do not want the living to disturb their peace. One of the most disturbing phenomena reported by visitors is the appearance of the phantom lights. These strange orbs of light float through the cemetery, drifting in and out of view, always just out of reach. Some believe these lights are spirit guides, leading the way for lost souls, while others insist they are something more sinister, like will-o'-the-wisps, luring people deeper into the graveyard, where they might never return. There's an eerie legend that one grave in the cemetery, long abandoned, holds the key to understanding why this place is cursed. It's known simply as the Forgotten Grave, and it is believed to be the final resting place of someone who was not supposed to die. This person, the story goes, was wrongfully buried in Bachelor's Grove, and their soul never found peace. Now they are said to haunt the cemetery, seeking revenge on anyone who dares to disturb their resting place. Those who have attempted to locate this grave have reported strange visions as they search. The trees seem to move, as though trying to hide the path, and the gravestones appear to shift when no one is looking. Many visitors feel a force pushing them back, as if the cemetery itself is trying to protect the secret hidden within the earth. For those who do manage to stumble across the forgotten grave, they often experience something that defies explanation. A sudden rush of fear, a sense of doom that overwhelms them, compelling them to leave immediately, even if they're unsure of what they've witnessed. And then there are those who claim they've seen shadowy figures standing at the edge of the cemetery watching them. The figures don't move, don't speak, but their presence is undeniable. Some say these figures are the spirits of the restless dead, waiting for someone to take the blame for the curse that haunts the graveyard. As Jacob continued his research into the haunting tales of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, he began to uncover more chilling details. What started as a simple curiosity quickly turned into a relentless obsession. The stories he had heard as a child about the place were nothing compared to the bone-chilling encounters that had been reported over the years. It was no longer just a ghost story, it was a living nightmare, and Jacob felt himself being pulled deeper into its grip with each passing day. The more Jacob delved into the history of the cemetery, the more he learned about its dark past. One account in particular stood out. It was said that, many years ago, a group of men from the nearby town decided to spend the night at the cemetery, daring each other to visit the graves at midnight. What they encountered was something that no one had ever been able to explain. According to the account, the men began to feel an unseen presence as they ventured deeper into the cemetery. At first, it was just an overwhelming sense of being watched, a feeling that made their skin crawl. But as they walked further, the feeling grew stronger, more tangible. Cold drafts brushed past them, and shadows that moved without a source seemed to follow their every step. In the distance, the men spotted a dim light flickering, barely visible between the tombstones. Curious and terrified, they moved toward it, each step making the darkness feel more oppressive. As they approached, the light grew brighter, but as they reached the grave where the light was emanating from, it vanished. And that's when things took a turn for the worse. The men were suddenly surrounded by a thick fog, so dense they could barely see their hands in front of their faces. Footsteps echoed around them, but when they turned to look, no one was there. One of the men, driven by a mix of fear and determination, called out into the mist, "Who's there?" That was when the figure appeared, a woman pale and dressed in a long white gown, standing at the edge of the fog. Her eyes were hollow as if drained of life, and her expression was both sorrowful and unsettling. The men froze in terror, unable to move or speak. The woman, without a sound, began to walk toward them, her footsteps heavy, as if the earth itself was reluctant to release her. Each step seemed to make the fog thicken, until she was mere inches from them, her face still obscured in shadow. Then the men screamed as one of them, the bravest of the group, reached out to touch her, thinking perhaps it was just a trick of the mind. But as his fingers brushed against her, his body froze. His face turned pale, his body stiff, and he crumbled to the ground, lifeless. The others tried to flee, but the mist swallowed them, and soon they too vanished into the fog. They were never seen again. When the bodies of the men were eventually found, they were discovered at the edge of the cemetery, their faces twisted in expressions of absolute terror. It was as though they had been suffocated by something invisible, their lives snuffed out by a force they could never understand. This chilling tale is only one of many that surround Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, but it's the one that haunts most. The spirits of those who perished there, the restless souls, are said to still wander the grounds. The legend of the woman in white, her hollow eyes and her silent vengeance, has become a part of the very fabric of the cemetery's dark lore. But it wasn't just the apparitions that disturbed Jacob. He also uncovered accounts of people who had visited the cemetery only to feel the ground beneath them shift, like it was alive, reacting to their presence. One particular story involved a man who had entered the cemetery with a group of friends to explore its dark history, but as they made their way past the gravestones, the earth began to rumble beneath their feet. The ground cracked open, revealing a deep, dark void beneath it, as if the earth itself was hiding something. The man, terrified, turned to his friends to flee, but when he looked back at the hole, something dark and formless had emerged from it, something that did not belong. The man's heart stopped as he saw the figure of a person standing in the hole, but this person wasn't human. Its eyes were like black voids, and its skin was ashen, as if it had been dead for years. It stood there silently, staring at him with an unnatural stillness. The man ran, but the figure followed him, moving with inhuman speed, closing the distance between them in seconds. His friends disappeared, their screams lost in the wind. When the man finally reached the edge of the cemetery, he collapsed, gasping for air. When he turned around, the figure was gone. However, he knew what he had seen. He knew that something in that cemetery was alive, something that had waited for years to be unleashed. Jacob's obsession with Bachelor's Grove Cemetery deepened. His nights spent combing through every old newspaper clipping, every local legend, and every eyewitness account he could find. The stories all pointed to the same conclusion. The cemetery was cursed, a place of unspeakable evil, and those who dared to enter its grounds risked being consumed by it. But what Jacob couldn't shake, what gnawed at him relentlessly, was the strange connection he felt to the place. He couldn't help but wonder, was the curse truly something supernatural, or was it simply a manifestation of something much darker? Was the cemetery's terrifying power the result of a curse, or something more sinister? After weeks of researching, Jacob decided to visit the cemetery again. The draw was undeniable. Every time he stood before its rusted gates, an inexplicable pull made him feel like there was something important there, something he had to uncover. As he approached the entrance one evening, the sky was dim and the air was unusually still. The usual rustling of leaves was absent, and the chill in the air felt like an omen. The cemetery, normally forgotten by those in the town, seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as though it were alive, aware of his presence. Jacob took a deep breath, the weight of what he was about to do pressing down on him. The moment he stepped through the gates, the temperature dropped sharply. Jacob noticed the familiar sense of unease, but he pressed on, determined to find answers. As he made his way past the broken gravestones, he could feel the earth beneath him tremble slightly with each step. He stopped in front of the graveyard's oldest tombstone, where the woman in white was said to have been seen. Something about this grave felt different from the others. It was well worn, its inscription nearly illegible, but Jacob felt compelled to touch it. As his fingers brushed the stone, a strange energy surged through him, and he suddenly felt dizzy, his vision momentarily blurry. Then, for the first time since he had entered the cemetery, the silence broke. A soft whisper, barely audible, drifted through the trees, but it wasn't the wind. It was the voice of a woman, soft and mournful, pleading for help. Jacob's heart skipped a beat. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. But the only response was another whisper, this time clearer than before. "Help me!" The ground shifted under his feet, and Jacob stumbled, nearly losing his balance. The air grew thick, charged with an energy that made his skin crawl. The wind picked up, swirling around him, and the temperature dropped even further. Then suddenly, the earth beneath his feet cracked open. A deep gash appeared in the ground, like a wound that refused to heal. Jacob fell to his knees, gripping the stone tombstone for support, staring at the fissure in the earth. Something was coming. Something had awakened. His breath quickened as the ground trembled again. The whispering voices grew louder, murmuring unintelligible words. And for a brief moment, Jacob thought he saw a figure in the distance. It was the woman in white, standing at the far edge of the cemetery, motionless but staring directly at him. Her eyes were hollow, her face hidden in shadow. As Jacob tried to steady himself, the ground suddenly shifted again. From the crack, an unnatural glow began to seep out. Faint, bluish, like the light of a distant star. The whispering grew louder, until it was almost deafening. Jacob tried to move to get away, but his legs wouldn't obey him. The energy around him was suffocating. Just then, a figure emerged from the glowing crack in the earth. A tall, shadowy form, so tall it seemed to reach the sky. It moved slowly, its outline flickering like a ghost, but with a malevolent presence that made Jacob's heart race in terror. The woman in white was no longer visible, replaced by this towering figure, its face hidden behind a veil of shadows. "You shouldn't have come, Jacob." The voice, low and guttural, filled the air. It was the voice of someone who had been dead for centuries, yet somehow still alive in this cursed place. The figure took another step forward, its form blurring in and out of focus. Jacob stumbled backward, his heart pounding, sweat dripping down his face. He wanted to run, to escape, but the figure was closing in. The ground beneath him seemed to move, as if trying to pull him in, to drag him back into the earth. "Why are you here?" Jacob gasped, struggling to speak as the figure loomed over him. "What do you want from me?" The shadow's form flickered again, then solidified into something more recognizable. A man's face, but horribly twisted and deformed. A figure from the past. "You were meant to find it. You were always meant to find it, Jacob. The curse, the blood, the truth." Jacob's chest tightened as the weight of the words hit him. The curse was not just a force of nature, it was tied to him, tied to his bloodline. He was the key to unlocking the full force of the curse, and in doing so, he would either release or strengthen the entity now standing before him. The tall figure reached out a hand, long fingers that seemed to stretch unnaturally far. "You are bound by your blood, Jacob, and it's time for you to choose." The ground began to rumble louder, the energy swirling around Jacob. He could feel the cold seeping into his very soul, and in that moment, he knew the truth. There was no turning back. He was already deeply entwined in this curse, and whether he wanted it or not, he had become a part of something far darker than he could ever have imagined. Jacob stood frozen, his body trembling as the shadowy figure loomed over him, its fingers stretching out like dark tendrils, seeking to grab him. The air around him felt suffocating, the weight of centuries of darkness pressing down on him, threatening to crush him under its power. The ground beneath him seemed to pulse, alive with a terrifying force, as though it were urging him to make a decision, one that would either unleash or destroy the curse that had bound this land for so long. The figure's voice echoed again, louder this time, its words like a command. "You've already uncovered the truth, Jacob. You were meant to find the curse. But now you must decide. Will you break the chains or strengthen them?" Jacob's heart raced, the pounding in his chest matching the rhythm of the tremors beneath him. He didn't know what the figure meant by breaking or strengthening the curse. Was it a choice between life and death? Or was there something else that had to be sacrificed? He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on his shoulders, the responsibility of what had happened to his family, what had happened to Sarah, Eli, and Noah, now fully dawning on him. His mind raced, searching for a way out, but all he saw was the shadow reaching out for him. The whispering voices had grown louder, more frantic, urging him to make his choice. They were Sarah, Eli, and Noah, their calls laced with sorrow and longing, as if they too were trapped by the curse and desperate to be freed. "Please, Jacob." Sarah's voice was the clearest, her tone laced with both sorrow and hope. "Do it for us. You can end this." Jacob felt a deep, gut-wrenching pain as the memories of his family flooded his mind. His children's laughter, Sarah's warm smile, the love they had shared. How could he possibly be the one to end it all? How could he betray his own bloodline, even if it meant freeing them from their suffering? The shadow figure's face twisted again, its hollow eyes glowing brightly in the darkness. It leaned closer, its presence overwhelming, and Jacob knew that the dark entity was waiting for him to make a decision. "Do you wish to break the curse, Jacob?" the figure demanded, its voice more commanding now. "Or will you become one with the land? The price will be steep, but you will be the one to decide whether your family's souls find peace or if they are condemned forever." Jacob swallowed hard, his eyes glistening with tears as he glanced once more at the grave where his family lay. The image of Eli and Noah, their innocent faces forever etched in his memory, burned in his heart, and Sarah's face, so full of love and warmth, seemed to watch over him from beyond the grave. In that moment, Jacob realized the answer. The truth was clear. The curse wasn't just about separating the living from the dead. It was about the power of love, the strength of family, and the unbreakable bond that tied them together, even in death. With trembling hands, Jacob reached for the shimmering locket that had been placed in his hand earlier, the same locket that had been buried with his family. He didn't know how, but it seemed to hold the key to unlocking the curse. The strange glow that had pulsed in the locket before seemed to intensify in his grip, as though it were calling out to him. "I choose to break it," Jacob whispered to the night, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. He held the locket high, and the moment he did, a powerful shock wave ripped through the air, shaking the very ground beneath him. The shadows that had once surrounded him now dissipated, drawn into the light of the locket as if the dark energy was being sucked into it. The earth rumbled, and a loud crack echoed through the cemetery as the fog began to lift. The graveyard, once suffocating with the weight of the curse, seemed to come alive with a new energy, a sense of release, as if the very air had been cleansed. The whispering voices began to fade, their cries now peaceful, no longer desperate or mournful. Jacob looked up at the sky, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he felt a sense of peace, as though the weight of his decision had finally freed his family from their torment. In the distance, Jacob thought he saw a faint figure, a woman smiling gently, with Eli and Noah by her side. They were finally free, their spirits no longer bound to the land of the dead. But as the light dimmed and the earth settled, Jacob knew that this would not be the end of the story. He had paid the price for breaking the curse, but the mysteries surrounding Bachelor's Grove Cemetery remained. The shadows may have receded, but the land still held secrets, and some forces never truly go away. As Jacob walked away from the gravesite, a final whisper echoed in his mind. "Thank you." The curse was broken, but the legacy of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery would live on, and its secrets would continue to haunt those who dared to uncover them.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.